Hi, so this is Tuulia and Pete of Honesty Europe, and I wanted to make a short video about Pete's recent certification of Somatic Experiencing, as many people have asked about that, and I found that's kind of pretty interesting. So, Pete, can you tell in few words what's the most important thing for you around Somatic Experiencing? How did you decide to go for that training?
Aren't you going to congratulate me?
Yeah, congratulations on your certification. 3 years of hard work.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, I am now certified as a Somatic Experiencing practitioner. What was the question?
Why or how did you decide to go for that? What's important for you around this practice?
Well, in our radical honesty workshops, noticing when people talked about traumatic events from the past, that there seemed to be a link to them being a bit disconnected from their bodies and their physical sensations, and then learning that somatic experiencing addresses that very directly. That's very much a major tenet of the practice, is that when we are overwhelmed in a moment with fear and go into the shutdown or immobilization state, the freeze state, that we tend to disconnect from our physical sensations as a way to survive the moment. And then after the moment passes, we tend to, as humans, to have trouble coming out of that freeze state, unlike every other mammal who shakes it off, and we tend to stay a bit in our heads with it. Our brains are very good at accomplishing a lot for us as humans, and one thing's not so good at is getting over those moments when we are overwhelmed or we're frozen. And seeing that how I could support those in our workshops and our practice by learning more of these tools and skills. And I think it blends in, overlaps very well with what we do with radical honesty.
Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if you could tell a little bit more about how you can use somatic experiencing tools and skills in our workshops. Can you give some examples?
How I can?
Mm-hmm.
Well, just first of all, noticing very basically when someone is talking about a traumatic event in their past. Sometimes traumatic events aren't even what, maybe even just someone learning about a traumatic event happening to someone else. That in itself can be a traumatic moment for us. So just picking up more when someone is talking about that. Understanding much more about what is happening physically as we talk about events. That there's lots and lots of little things about that I've learned that I judge helps me when working with clients, workshop participants. Slowing it down, not trying to do too much, taking it in bite-sized pieces, feeling grounded myself, feeling far more confident that we will get to a better place by talking about it and by noticing what's happening in the body as we talk about it. Just a lot more of that confidence of how to handle this makes me far calmer, I judge, and grounded in the workshops.
What is an example of a traumatic event, for example, that you have worked with?
For my own, because I also worked on a lot of my own traumas as part of the.
Maybe start with that.
Well, being beaten by teachers, physically beaten by teachers when I was young, being assaulted a number of times as a teenager, beaten till I was unconscious, nearly drowning 3 times, being in the 1989 earthquake in San Francisco. For example, when I was still quite, as say in somatic experiencing terms, overcoupled, where the event had passed, and yet I was still stuck with the event, and so the earthquake had passed, and yet if I would hear, for example, rumbling in the building, like one time I was in a shoe store, heard rumbling upstairs in the storeroom, and my heart was racing. And even though rationally I knew, and the people around me were telling me, this is not an earthquake, there's just someone moving shoe boxes upstairs. Yet to me, I was still very activated and triggered that I'm now experiencing an earthquake again, that I am under threat, feeling that I'm under threat when the threat was actually not present.
Yeah.
And yeah, imagine a lot of my period as a young man, I felt under threat when threat wasn't present. And for other people, is sort of so-called undercouple, that after the traumatic event, when there is threat for them, that they don't recognize it right in front of them.
Could you give an example of somebody you work with? What kind of events or topics you have worked with?
Well, people have been sexually abused, people have been physically abused. And so I like working with, combining it with radical honesty, in that, for example, doing the empty chair work that we do with the hot seats. And so not only just having the person talk about the work on the traumatic event itself, but also, for example, do some empty chair work with, if there was someone else involved in the event, to express their anger, for example.
Yeah. Maybe to finish with, what at the moment comes to you as your key takeaway from that 3-year training? What would be the most important things for you? You mentioned the personal topics you work with. Is there some particular tools or thematics that you find useful for your profession or workshops?
Well, I think, I liked working with very much a body-based practice, and applying that far more to our radical honesty practice. Keeping people in the moment, to experience the moment, no matter how uncomfortable that may be, seeing how therapeutic or beneficial or whatever it is for them. Somatic experiencing is different than radical honesty, and yet it overlaps in many ways and helped me deepen my radical honesty practice. So tools, I don't know, maybe just really paying attention to the bodies helped me far more help others track the physical sensations.
Right. And you mentioned grounding. Can you say just a few words about that?
Well, just using our body and noticing our physical sensations to take us out of the moment of our ever-racing minds with our thoughts. And so for people who have been traumatized, these sensations in their body were quite overwhelming at the time, and paying attention to sensations may actually now be a bit reactivating or re-triggering or whatever, re-traumatizing. At the same time, our paying attention to our physical sensations can be a wonderful way to ground for those who are able to do so, to step out of our thoughts, if only for a few seconds, and just pay attention to what is reality, because this is not reality. What we notice in the moment is far more reality.
Right. Thank you so much.
Is this your little talk show?
This is my little talk show, and so this is Tuulia and Pete of Honesty Europe. Welcome to our workshops. Ciao.
And now what?
Now we say bye-bye.
Oh, bye.